Hey guys, it's Bang for About PC Gamer here. I'm just going to share with you what I've been doing over the last few days. I've obviously doing my last upgrade for the year. I've been planning this for a while now, but I thought I'd wait until Black Friday just to save myself a bit of money. So I'm just going to share with you the parts I've bought and give you a quick look around the build now. So some of the parts I've got here. My power supply is the Corsair HX 1000i. I ended up getting that just to had a bit more headroom for the two GTX 980 Ti's that I'm using in my system. I end up having to buy a new cooler as I've moved on to the X99 platform, and unfortunately my XSPC Raystorm 360 was only compatible with 2011, not 2011 V3. And funnily enough, the price it would cost me to get a new water block and mounting is the same price of me buying a Corsair H110i GT. So I bought myself a new cooler, and I'll just sell off the XSPC at a later date. I ended up getting the MSI Gaming 7 X99A motherboard. It got really good reviews. I've been told it's a really good overclocker, so hopefully that will benefit my Intel i7 5930K that I purchased as well. The reason I got that instead of the 5820K was because I got a good deal since it was Black Friday. The price difference between the two processors was around about £60, and with that £60 I get an extra, I think it's 12 PCI lanes, which means both my GTX 980 Ti's can run at 16 times, and I still have enough bandwidth to run two M.2 SSDs and some other PCI expansions, which is just nice for upgradability, really. And I also got 32 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance LPX. Now, 32 gigabytes, why? There isn't really a why, it's just because I could. And more memory means you can do things a lot more, actually, with a lot more programs going at once. So it's just a bit of headroom. You never know what the future holds. We all used to say 8 gigabytes was enough for gaming, but it turns out that that's coming to an end now. Games are starting to use quite a lot of system memory. So it's good just to prepare for the future, I say. So that's all the parts I've bought, and I'll show you what it looks like in my system. So this is what the system looks like turned on. The only downfall about running the two GTX 980 Ti's at 16 times each is that they have to have very close spacing. Unfortunately, the MSI Gaming 7 doesn't allow me to use the PCI Express lanes a bit lower. If I do that, I have to run both cards at 8 times, which is, in the long run, probably not going to affect performance. If my temperatures get too hot, I will change the positioning of the cards, but for now I'll see how it goes, and I'll make amendments if I need to. To my right you can see my OCZ SSD, and in the bottom there is my Corsair HX 1000i. There's the H110 GT. It does change colors. Right now it's blue, but I've set it up to change when it comes to temperature. So it glows blue when it's between 25 and 40 degrees. When it goes between 40 and 60, it goes yellow. Anything over 60 to 70, it goes red. So right now it's at idle. But overall, pretty happy with the look of the build, and it looks pretty respectable, pretty clean, and the cooler does a pretty good job as well. It is pretty noisy. You do have to make yourself your own custom profile. The presets ain't that great. So if you got the time to create your own custom profile, then you can get around the noise of the H110 GT. So yeah, there's a look of the PC, and I'll show you some performance in a few moments. So having a look at my setup, I was able to achieve an overclock of 4.6 gigahertz. I did hope for 4.7, but this chip really didn't even want to do 4.6. I had to end up increasing the base clock up to 1.2.20 just to get it to 4.6, and it also took me 1.335 volts to get there. Now most people do use 1.3 as a maximum. This chip at 4.5 will do that at 1.275, which is pretty decent. But 4.6 is respectable overclock, and I'm pretty impressed with it overall. My memory is running at over 2600 megahertz, which is pretty nice as well. I've noticed most people, when they overclock this processor, they have to knock back down on the memory speed. I'm using my 32GB of Corsair HX DDR4. It runs at 2400 megahertz at the box, but when you choose his XMP profile 2, that jumps up to 2666 megahertz. Because I've increased the base clock, this has increased even further. I know it says 1.362 here, but it is double data rate, so you times that by 2 and you'll get the actual memory speed of the memory module. One of the good things about the Intel i7-5930K is that it does have 40 PCIe lanes, which means that both of my GTX 980Ti's are running at 16 times. And now I know there's not really any graphics cards at the moment that can saturate PCI Express 3.0 even at 8 times, so I don't expect to see any tangible difference in performance, but we never know what the future holds, so it's always good to prepare for it. And it's nice to know that both of my graphics cards are running at full speed. And I've done a slight overclock here, nothing extreme. I've shown you the new position of my graphics cards, so my second card is gonna be a little bit starved of oxygen. So I'm not going too crazy on the overclock. 210 on the core, 300 on the memory, and a slight bump to the voltage with 25%, 25 plus, so nothing major, and pretty much any GTX 980 Ti can achieve this. So I'm going to jump into some games and see if there's any difference between the two processors when it comes to performance. Okay, so the first game I'm going to test is Crysis 3. Now the reason I chose Crysis 3 was, in places it can be pretty demanding on the CPU, and the settings I used were a resolution of 2560 by 1440. Anti-aliasing was set to 4 times. Texture resolution and system specs are both at very high, which is pretty much maxed out. Jumping into the advanced settings, you can see I used 16 times anisotropic filtering. Motion blur disabled because it doesn't look too good, and lens flare was enabled. So those are the settings I used for Crysis 3. Let's see if there's any difference in performance between the two processors.
Gunslinger 2-1, action. Enemy ICOM chatter indicates they're still in the area. How copy? Good copy. We're just coming up on the area now, over. Charlie, take the lead. Roger. Thinking with the rebels? No way.
Those electric arrowheads you got can light up a large area. Try them out in the lake there.
There he is! The asshole took down the tower! Enveloping target!
Warning. Insurgent activity reported in perimeter structure.
Flanking! Weapons free! Move
Heads up. Cell weapons drop near your location.
Threat level is now elevated.
Moving on to The Witcher 3, as we know, in highly populated areas this does also put a bit of stress on CPU, so this is a decent test to see if the extra cores with the 5930K does add any increased performance. So the in-game settings I used was a resolution of 2560 by 1440. Nvidia Hairworks was enabled, and also the anti-aliasing level was at 8 times, which is the maximum. Preset was also at high, and all the other settings were set to ultra. Now moving on to post-processing, motion blur, again I disable it, as I don't think it does add anything to the game. Blur itself is a different feature. Anti-aliasing was enabled. Bloom sharpening again is a filter which doesn't really affect performance, and I think when it's set at very high, it kind of makes it look a little bit cartoonish. I think it makes the game look a little bit too unrealistic for my taste. Ambient occlusion is at HBO plus, and depth of field and chromatic aberration, and all of the rest of these settings are also enabled. So that's all the settings I use for The Witcher 3. And I'm going to take a walk around Novigrad and see if we can see a difference in performance between the two processors.
Long live Radovid!
Oh,
Wash your hair.
I've had more in this fucking shit.
Hey, Whitey, why'd your hair go white?
God, listen to you.
Eternal fire walk with you.
Learned all the easy to find with
Where you
short
going?
rations.
Should have stayed in the
Use it
forest with
quickly.
my unit. Might at least have died with dignity.
So that's pretty much it for the games. Good to see there was actually a slight improvement in performance, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest. This wasn't really the reason I upgraded. It was more to, just balance out my system, have a bit of CPU headroom going into the future, and possibly the hope of more utilization with the introduction of DirectX 12 games, and also just to help me with my productivity. Obviously I game at 4K now. Rendering projects at 4K can be very, very time consuming on a quad core processor, so I upgraded to the 5930K. I know I get a lot of stick for people saying, for calling myself a bang for buck PC gamer, but you need to understand, when I first started doing this, I was running a 2500K i5 Sandy Bridge processor and a single R9 290. Since then, my needs have grown and I've worked really hard to get to where I am. So, I'm pretty happy with the overall build, and hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.